Hi everybody, it's Mike Andrew. The following video, I want to provide my personal perspective of what we mean by strategic thinking, a very common leadership competency. I think you might be surprised with my views on this. You know, there's a very common leadership competency that executives and managers are often assessed on, and it's called strategic thinking or having a strategic mindset. And I think it's very misunderstood. Oftentimes it's mistaken to be developing strategy. I've had people tell me the way to develop your strategic thinking is to write your own strategy. And I don't think that is really realistic, what goes on in the workplace on a daily basis. Honestly, this is controversial, but I don't think many executives and managers develop strategies. They're too busy trying to execute the strategies that are in place. But they do have a responsibility to think strategically and demonstrate a strategic mindset. But what does that mean? In my opinion, this is my opinion, an executive or manager that thinks strategically, what they're doing is they're demonstrating an executive perspective. They're demonstrating insight. They understand the big picture. They can think critically, ask the right questions. They can communicate the company's strategy, and very importantly, they execute on their goals, because strategy without the ability to execute is nothing. But really, it's all about having that executive perspective. It's not about developing a strategy. And I don't think managers and executives spend time doing that. They're too busy. Now, at the board level and CEO level, of course, that's their job. And how do they do their job? Oftentimes, they delegate it to an outside firm like McKinsey or BCG or Bain, because those firms they're experts at it, and they can dedicate themselves into analyzing everything about the industry and the business and propose a strategy, which then the board and the CEO can review, they can critique, make some edits, finally approve it, and very importantly, communicate it so that the rest of the company can execute. I think the closest we come to developing strategy is when we develop our KPIs or our objectives for the year to ensure that those objectives or KPIs are aligned upwards, and those in the rest of the organization, their KPIs are aligned to ours as managers or executives. So it's about demonstrating an executive perspective, having insight in the business, being able to ask critical questions, and understanding the big picture and communicating and executing. That's what strategic thinking is to me. It's not about developing a strategy, even a vision. I mean, how many of us really create visions? That's for the top of the house. I always say, if you want to create a vision as a manager or an executive, create a vision as the type of leader you want to be. Create a vision as to what you want your leadership brand to be so that your organization consistently achieves results and a high level of performance while doing so with integrity. Let me give you a real life example. You know, I'm in the talent development and the leadership development field, and I had my own business for a while with Fortune 100 companies. And of course, I was a vice president, chief talent officer, where I would do this internally for the companies I worked with. And here's an example of how I would do my best at thinking strategically with an executive perspective. When I was putting together a talent development strategy or leadership development strategy, I would start by talking to the senior leadership with context number one. You got to do it within the context. What's going on externally? What's going on in the industry trends, the competitive threats? What are the opportunities and threats out there? What are some of the strengths and weaknesses? You can call that the SWOT analysis. What are the technology challenges that we're dealing with, global challenges, and so forth? So everything externally that's a bit out of our control. Based on that level one context, now how does that translate to level two context? Tell me more about your objectives, your goals, your strategies, and so forth, and are they aligned? Do they make sense based on the external environment we just talked about? Then I bring it down to a third level. Based on the two levels of context, what do you think are those two or three or four core company-wide capabilities that we must excel at in order to realize our strategy, in order to be who we say we want to be? And those two or three or four capabilities forms the basis of leadership development strategies and talent development strategies. Very important. That's, to me, in my opinion, strategic thinking and developing an executive perspective, looking at the big picture, asking the right questions, demonstrating insight, and once you do that, then communicating and executing. I hope this makes sense. Feel free to comment. I love reading the comments, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.